Welcome to the Inspire Live series. Happy Pride Month. Juneteenth is right around the corner. It is certainly an inspiring month. And we started hosting this series right when the pandemic started to really bring together leaders to talk about the very top issues, keeping them up at night. You can always listen to our past episodes on our website, or you can catch us on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We're called Inspired there. So again, I'm Jamie Klein, CEO of Inspire HR. In case you don't know us, we advise HR and business leaders with all the things that bring them pain in this time of rapid transformation. We do HR, talent acquisition, total rewards, and talent management, always through a lens of DEIB. We have 25 plus experts who at mid and senior levels who fill in interim gaps, take on strategic projects for teams that are stretched wide, and advise. So it is great to see so many new folks joining us today. And what we have found in these volatile times is that fractional work has become a thing, that so many folks are using these elastic resources of partners, and it's always our pleasure to do so. So today we are joined by three outstanding colleagues of mine to talk specifically about all the challenges facing high growth companies. Ariel Spiker, head of HR at Point72, Annette Krasner, the CEO of GlowCap Search, and Monica Bright-Hill, who's an Inspire HR expert, specifically in the HR business partner area. Ariel, Annette, Monica, thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to jump in.
So let's jump right in. I know there's a lot that we want to cover. We also had folks send in questions beforehand. So I want to kind of set the table. When a company is entering that growth mode, or perhaps they're an established organization just kind of rethinking the roles of their company, what are those core HR competencies we need to prioritize to really build out all of that restructuring or structuring of a HR department in this very new world of work? Ariel, can we kick it off with you, please?
Happy to. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you to everybody on the call today and my esteemed panelists as well. Thinking at a high level about what we need, I thought about this at a sort of what types of roles do you need and what types of competencies do you need? Now, I want to be clear, every firm on this call and out there, we're going to be representing different sizes of organizations. So as I speak about things, it may be that one person is doing a lot of these roles simultaneously, and it may be that you're of a size and scale that you can have multiple people doing it. Mm-hmm. You may also be partnering with external people to do these roles and competencies. So I am not suggesting that you need sort of one for each thing, merely that each of these concepts and each of these areas should be covered.
Okay.
So in terms of roles, I think about things like you need a head of HR, or you need someone in charge, ultimately calling the shots, ultimately being responsible. That person could be wearing multiple hats, but again, you need a single person doing that. Secondly, you need total rewards covered. So compensation, benefits. Increasingly, we're seeing people with shifting from just the standard, 401k, medical, dental, vision, and also think about things like wellness. But you want somebody in that space. You want an HR business partner or somebody who can act as the go-between for the client group and HR. Again, it may be the same person acting in this facility, in this capacity, excuse me. Talent management. So this would be things like 360s, performance reviews, talent analytics, coaching, mentoring. You need recruitment. So how do we go out and find the right people? How do we assess them to bring them in? And then increasingly, you also need analytics, operations, somebody who can help gather the information you need for the smooth running of the function and the firm.
Such important points, yeah.
And I'm going to switch now to competencies. So those are the sort of subject areas, if you will. In terms of competencies, things that have been on my mind of late and that my colleagues on the phone and I have talked about are as sort of areas of interest. So number one, agility, adaptability. The world is changing quickly. We need to figure out how to adapt to it. Pragmatism and commerciality. that, with 1,000,001 resources and all the money in the world, there's certain things that you can do. Most of us don't live in that reality. And so we
Right.
have to figure out from a practical standpoint, from a commercial standpoint, what makes sense for our business. Growth mindset. How do we take, setbacks? How do we take challenges and work against them, work through them, get to the other side of it, see this as an opportunity to get better as opposed to feeling defeated. Analytics, I mentioned this before, but increasingly and thinking about how much data is at people's fingertips. How do we harness that? How do we organize it? How do we tag it? And then how do we use it to generate insights to help lead what we're going to do next? And then finally, empathy. And empathy, I think, is something that for a long time was missed from the discourse, but I think is an important ingredient, has always been, but I think is increasingly important in the dialogue.
OMG, you literally could write the book. This is why our firm loves working with Point 72. You just bring such a modern approach, and you lead with heart among it all. It's a tall order, and I really appreciate you touching on empathy, because that was never discussed at a core competency when you and I worked together years ago at American Express, but that is very much in the dialogue. That's who folks want to work with, the folks that are very much authentic and let them bring their whole self to work. Monica, any thoughts from you?
Well, first, thank you for having me. And I think Ariel took all the words out of my mouth. So I'm happy that she touched on not only all the roles, but also the competencies. I think something to add here is that HR, in order to be successful, needs to be part of the discussion, right? It can't be an afterthought. It needs to be part of the strategic planning. It needs to be aligned with the company's overall strategy and goals. I think that when we think about HR, sometimes HR is like, oh, and HR, and it can't be and HR. It has to be, HR needs to be at the forefront, on the foundation, creating a space, for the company to be empathetic. And I also think that what we don't often talk about and what we need from HR is HR needs to be trained. So although we have lots of experience just on this panel, HR is changing every single day, and we
Sure.
as HR professionals need to be able to stay up and close to the things that are changing, laws, states. We talked about this a little while ago. States are changing their laws every single day, and we need to be on the forefront of that so that we can then advise the rest of the leadership team as to how we need to move for our employees. And lastly, I think in terms of what HR needs to do is we need to be trusted. So we need to be honest, we need to be trusted, we need to be transparent. And I think when you combine all of those things, now we're ready to move forward.
Absolutely. I love what you said. And I think that trust feels like a luxury these days, especially in this kind of global climate. I think that when that relationship is very much there with the top of the house, there's nothing that you can't, there are no bounds. And I have a question that I wanted to tee up to you. When we think about, Ariel talked about, not every organization has resources for folks in all these roles, but boy, we need these competencies in the human or the lean and mighty team that is there. So how do you address all of these needs with a lean and mighty team? It's a challenge I think a lot of high growth companies face. I'd love your thoughts on that.
Sure. And thank you from me too. This has been a pleasure. And for many of you on the call, you know that there's always a prep session, and I really enjoyed that as well. So thank you for including me. And I learned something every time I get to do these things as well. So I spent a long time at a very large bank where I was the recipient of many of the things that Ariel touched upon, with the best of the best in big groups. And then I left and went to a small firm, a small hedge fund, where not small in asset size, but small in people size, where I was the chief administrative officer. And I had to recreate what I would consider a center of excellence in a big firm where there were a lot of people, and I had to do it what I call in the dollhouse version. But every single thing needed to be done in the same excellent way. And how could I possibly do it? one of the stories I was laughing about before the start of the panel was I joined Pine River Capital, was the hedge fund where I was the CEO, and I joined right like a week after Hurricane Sandy. And I had spent my whole life at a place where I didn't have to send out the memo of what
Right.
there was an executive office, there were HR professionals, there were legal people. And someone came into my office and said, when are you sending out the email about guiding us on what has to be done? And I said, I'm sending that? And it
Right.
that the dollhouse version, but all of those things, total returns, benefits, HR business partner, onboarding, etc. So what I have always done my whole career, and why I love these panels, is your network, your trusted partners, your trusted advisors, the people that you cannot do this alone. You just can't, especially whether you're at a big firm or whether you're at a medium-sized firm or whether you're at a small firm. You must have a network of people who you truly trust. And when I say that, I mean, you want referrals. Like, so if I were at a small firm and I wanted a phenomenal Comp and Ben firm to work with me, to be an extension of my team, I would have called Ariel and said, who do you work with? Or who do you know? And could you introduce me? Because I will tell you now that I run a recruiting firm, when someone sends me an introduction of a candidate, I respond. If someone just sends me, a cold call, it's just, you don't have enough hours in the day.
Sure.
Using your network to find other people who can be your elastic, I love that, elastic resource. And all that means is you can bring them in when needed,
Right.
out when you don't need them. But you need to know them when you don't need them. And that's really important. You can't decide, oh, I need a business continuity expert when something happens. You really need to think about all of the things that you need. And I used to literally have, who do I call for what?
Right. Like the role.
Who do I call to help me with recruiting? Who do I call to help me with, training and development? Who are my coaches? Who are all of the things that I had in-house at a big bank?
Absolutely.
And you also want to make sure that when you're working with the vendors and trusted providers, service providers, that you're working with the right people. Because when you're a small or mid-sized firm, sometimes you're relegated to the call the 800 number. I will never call an 800 number. Like, meaning you need to know, who are you calling? I mean, am I dating myself calling an 800 number if someone's texting?
No, I'm with you. I'm totally down with this. Yes, yes.
I guess my overarching point is you need to work with vendors that understand your business and that have aggregated mid-sized and small firms, so they don't treat you like a mid-sized or small firm. They treat you like a large firm, and they give you the center of excellence that large firms are able to do. And I hear this now from a candidate perspective, like a candidate's leaving a big place and they're going to a smaller place, and they want to make sure that they're going to have training and development.
Big time.
They're going to have onboarding. They're going to have, wellness. There's no way a small firm, people size and asset size.
Right. And I think you're right. I think that, humans are humans. It doesn't matter the head count. It doesn't matter the growth trajectory. Many of us in our network had this morning. Leaders said, how do we want to address employees about the air quality situation? Right. I mean, like, that wasn't on anybody's to-do list on Sunday, for a lot of the country. And now this is the thing. So I think having those relationships, I love what you said, almost having these relationships for when you didn't think that you needed them, but then you know them for when you do, when you're in a pinch. There are two organizations that I'm a huge fan of for that HR network. One is Troop HR, which is a phenomenal network. There's lots of folks in there that are in high growth businesses. And another is Startup Experts, which is a group for HR, finance, and operations, specifically at startup organizations or teams of one. And I'm forever crowdsourcing things with those organizations. And it's that trusted collective group.
Yeah, and I would say one more quick thing. Yeah. I'm sorry, I know I could talk too much, but so stop me. So the other thing is, everyone on the call needs to make an effort to build your network of other people like you. Like, my network is, when you're not making a widget and you're not building something, your people are your tools, right?
Sure.
People have, Patty Smith says people have the power. Well, people have the power to network, but it's time consuming and it can be exhausting. But if you don't give to get, but when you give, you also get. And like, it's just, and encourage the people on your teams to go to things. Because
Absolutely.
it's a career, not a job.
Absolutely. And Monica, I'd love your perspective. You have spent time at so many high growth companies. Any thoughts from you?
You know, Annette, thanks for that, because I think you touched on really where people need to be and how connecting and having a network is so very important. You know, we're doing this LinkedIn Live today, and knowing who to go to, even if you don't need them. I would say that that's what Inspire is. You know, we are the go-to people when you don't know where to go. You know, we have this team of amazing HR professionals that can HRBP, talent acquisition, merger, like all of the things. So in addition to expanding your network and understanding who your colleagues are, right? Not just connecting with them, but really getting to know them. And from a position of a HR professional of one, and being in that startup world, having resources to go to is essential. So Inspire is one of those resources that I would definitely, if I was not working for Inspire, I'd be tapping like, hey, help me. So something just to, you know, to think about.
Yeah, for 15 years, this is kind of like what we've been doing. And it's amazing. Everyone is now doing the gig thing, finance, operations, etc. You know, I want to touch on the moment in time that we're in, right? We are in a moment where there's, you know, growing mental health concerns, there's economic uncertainty, there's this overall volatility in the markets. With all that, what are the trends that we're seeing in response to that from a total rewards perspective to kind of steady our employees and attract and retain talent? So Monica, can you kick off that one also?
Yeah, thanks. So I think there are a couple of things when we're thinking about total rewards. You know, if I say back in the day, I remember when what was important was, what is my pay? Well, we're not there anymore. What's important is not only pay and benefits, there are also perks. You know, when we talk about mental health, you know, before we kicked any of this off, we did a moment of mindfulness. I've done that in companies that I've worked for, where in the beginning of a meeting, you take 2 or 3 minutes, you recenter, you get everyone to focus, everyone on the same page. So I think, you know, when we're thinking about the volatility, some things that I would say are flexible work arrangements. You know, you've got parents, single, married, you know, you've got domestic partnerships, but being able to be flexible in a work arrangement, I think, is so important in today's model. I would also say mental health support. So when we think about mental health, it's not just going to see someone to talk. It is, you know, are we paying for that? Do we have benefits around that? You know, someone said, what are the best benefits or perks that you're seeing? So in my last company, one of the things we implemented were fertility benefits, mindfulness, gym credits. What were some of the other things? And just, you know, something as simple as no meeting Friday.
Oh,
right?
sure.
So every other Friday, it was no meetings. Now, that doesn't mean you didn't have to work, but if you didn't have a lot of stuff to do, or you didn't have clients to meet with, and you needed to go to the doctor, go to the doctor. No one is going to be looking for you.
Sure.
And I think that is also something that's important. You know, let's not discount compensation, benefits. You
Sure.
know, all those things obviously are important, but it's all of the other things that are not necessarily seen.
Sure, right. It's like table stakes to have those things in place. But I think that candidates notice when organizations have these things in place or not. Yeah, Annette, thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that a couple of things that I've seen amongst my network are financial planning help for some of the younger professionals, you know, as they're starting to, you know, get into more of a VP or where they have the opportunity. Elder care, you know, some of the things as the world, you know, just adding to your
Please.
like,
Yeah.
and mission critical. Like, we did a really great job with charitable initiatives, really getting people to rewarding them for being on a board of a nonprofit, or if there is an opportunity to host something like, help with interview skills training, whether it's something, really get people, and it's also, that's a great way to build camaraderie. So, just total returns, but I put it in the total returns bucket because it's sponsored by the firm,
Right.
or organized by the firm.
Yeah. Yeah. Other things, someone I saw, it's that great question in the chat. Other innovative things that we've done, and we always recommend this to clients, is when you go ahead and meet with your broker, PEO, to talk about what the benefits package will look like. If there should always be mental health coverage, but asking them to ensure that there's strong BIPOC representation in providers. Asking them that there's folks from all sorts of communities on their provider list, ensuring that in-network physicians can give an annual checkup or care to a transgender colleague without there being a hiccup. These things should be table stakes, but I think to really be modern, that is very much the way that we need to show up for our employees. I was talking to someone yesterday who shared that she and her wife welcomed 2 kids, God love them, within the last 4 years. And they had to go through a process where they had to show for 6 months that they weren't able to conceive in order to be eligible for benefits. And she said that was like literally not possible. And it was like such a draining process to have to like do this paperwork with her OB. It was like, she said it just impacted my mental health, and it also took away from work hours. It just seems so preposterous, where other modern organizations, they have these things very much in place. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
That's interesting that you say, I'm sorry. That's interesting. You're right. Exactly what I was saying about, make sure you have the right vendors and service providers before you need them. It's the same thing that you just brought. I hadn't thought about that before. Make sure that you have all the providers to address all of your employees, the inclusive nature. So don't find it, someone who might be able to be more comfortable for a transgender employee until you have one. It's like when people say, well, now that I have a daughter, I understand women. I'm like, seriously? You're a human being. That's not why you hire women, because you have a daughter.
Right.
That's I learn something on these things all the time. It's great.
I love it. Ariel, you were doing all the modern things as well. Any thoughts from you?
The only addition, I think, again, Monica and Annette said a lot of it, increasingly one size doesn't fit all. So back to this idea of analytics, going out and asking people what they're looking for, polling, finding information, scouring resources, looking at your providers to give you information. What's the newest and latest and greatest? That would be the only thing I would add right now.
Love that. Yeah, that's great. And I'm blanking for a sec. What is the name of the mental health care provider? Not BetterUp. It lets your employees kind of do it all via Zoom. I'm blanking on it, but we can get it to folks. But like, there are just so many innovative things that have really all spun up during the pandemic, that while we're in a new stage of the pandemic, I think we absolutely want to make sure that all of these things are available. So before we move on to everyone's favorite topic of how they are approaching hybrid work, I want to pop up a poll so that folks can very quickly just weigh in. We'd love to know, how is your company handling all this? So just take a moment, if you would, to answer how your company is handling it, what their approach is to hybrid work. And while folks are answering, okay, 56%, so the vast majority, we are hybrid, where most people choose their own schedules. Okay, that's interesting. So we've heard from so many companies that, 3-2, 4-1, in and out, but I am so interested to see that it is letting people choose their own schedules. What we've heard a lot of folks say is it's really tricky if there isn't one core day that everyone is in the office. Obviously, there are pros and cons to that from the employee side. So hybrid, here we go. I know there are 4,000 opinions on this, but I'd love to hear what you all are seeing with all the companies that you speak to about how companies are really striking that right balance of getting leaders and employees on the same page. So Ariel, can you kick this one off for us?
Happy to. This is a really challenging issue, and it's something that I have changed my own mind about 50 times in the last couple of years. And I think it's important that Monica and Annette and I all address it, because we have different points of view and different realities. And I think it's really important for those on the call to understand that there is not a single model. A couple of thoughts about hybrid. It has struck me just how quickly everybody learned to adapt to additional flexibility. And I think that we learned some great lessons about what is possible and the good that can come from giving people some more flexibility about where and when they do their work. At the same time, I think we learned a cautionary tale about, in some instances, being exclusively remote has some consequences. I work for a firm where we are an apprenticeship model or apprentice-based model. And a lot of the learning that happens here happens by being side by side and next to each other and watching the verbal cues and hearing the chat before and after the meeting that is not actually the meeting. And I would liken it to, some children really thrived during the pandemic working or learning remotely. Some children needed to be live and in person. And I would say the same is true. And so I merely ask, everyone on the call to think about, for your organization, for where people are in their learning cycle. We've found, for example, that many of our interns want to be in the entire time during the summer because they don't want to miss out. And I've heard from external organizations, including some nonprofits who prepare students for internships and for school, that those who during the pandemic did their internships actually had weaker Excel skills, and that they underestimated how much of Excel was taught side by side and not, through a course. Because you would think Excel, that's something that you could learn by doing Zoom or whatever. And they said, no, it was the person leaning over your shoulder and saying, let me help you with this model.
Right.
So I think that there are some creative things that we can do. I have heard that there are a number of organizations, again, primarily in financial services, that's where most of my time is spent, where they're doing things like work from anywhere August, or pick any month that you want.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice balance of, on the one hand, giving flexibility to people, and on the other hand, acknowledging that some time together is very useful. I think having times of day, or trying to find a single day a week, or whatever it is when people can be together, would be great. But I think that this is a challenging question. I guess the last thing I would say is, think about a global business. Now, I have worked for global companies my entire life. Pre-pandemic,
Sure.
you had people in other offices working, and you had to work with them, and you were not sitting face to face.
Right.
So it's not a new concept to work with people who are not sitting face to face. And if you work for a global company, this is a reality. So I think it is very nuanced. I would merely say there are different solutions for different organizations, and I am seeing the benefit of both in-person and flexibility.
Yeah. And I love how you kicked it off with just being so downright honest. We've all gone through a personal journey on this, and we at Inspire talk to companies of every size, every industry, every zip code. Everyone's figuring it out. And I just want to kind of take away that FOMO. No one has nailed this.
Right.
We're all human. We're all just on a journey together in this thing. And I think that what happens is sometimes you'll see on Instagram a company that made a big decision, who is seen as a bellwether company that everyone feels like they need to then follow to keep up with talent. And I just think being more honest about the fact that we're all in beta, like the whole workforce is a little bit in beta right now, figuring this thing out. And I think to say this is what we need for now, and we'll continue to evaluate, is also just really, really honest. Annette, I know you see different trends across so many firms, so fill us in.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I'm a little muffled. I'm working from home, which I never do, and usually my internet is perfect, and it keeps saying it's unstable. So I hope you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you.
I feel, as Ariel, I have evolved. I mean, I've evolved. I was I grew up on a trading floor. I learned from turning to my left, turning to my right, watching, paying attention. staying late and getting Nick tickets. Like, I mean, I love my time. You know, when you're on the trading floor late, there's always someone who can't go to something, and there's always.
Right.
So I am really, this is a conundrum for me. It's a conundrum for candidates, you know, now that I see the candidate perspective, and I speak with people all day long about this. People, the younger people want to be in the office. They want to be trained and developed. The more seasoned people want to be in Montana and Connecticut and Florida and Southampton. It's a problem. You need to be very, I think where I'm coming to the conclusion, you have to be very intentional.
Mhm.
That you're in the right mix of people need to be in to make it powerful. And I agree there should be some flexibility, a modicum of flexibility. I like the 3 and 2 because that means that we know we're going to be in the office these days. And you know, I've also worked for global companies, and I spent a lot of time traveling because I thought it was really important to meet people in their space,
Right.
and in their you know, in their home office. I also think that, you know, when we used to do conference calls, why is it always New York time? Maybe one time it should be Hong Kong time, and we should wake up at 4 in the morning.
Absolutely.
I'm scared to ask people when English isn't their first language to talk at 2 in the morning when they're exhausted. It's hard. Like,
Right.
I think that there's so many amazing things that the pandemic taught us. This being one, we're doing this Zoom. I mean, this
Sure.
is touching a lot of people that we can't be in person.
Of course.
I promise you, if we could be in person one day, if that's really powerful too.
Yeah.
Generationally, and I think someone just put it in the chat, generationally, this is a little bit of a thing. I mean, all of the senior people, I'm like, you have to go to the office, or don't complain that your analysts or your junior team are not coming up to speed quickly.
Yeah.
You have to train and develop. And, you know, I think you have to be intentional about offsites. You have to be like, whatever you can do, lunch and learns, making sure people get some time together, to mitigate risk.
Sure.
I mean, no matter what you do for a living, not just financial services, there is a risk mitigation when people are comfortable calling up compliance or HR and
Sure.
telling them they're not sure of the decision to be made. When if you're home in your studio apartment and you can't get the compliance person on the phone, you may go in a wrong direction.
It's real. It is real.
So there's a lot of, I think that we're evolving, and I think the most important thing is to be fair. Don't have the admin staff and the HR staff and the accounting staff in the office and all the investment professionals and or the senior leadership team not have to come in. That's
Yeah.
not fair. And that's when you don't get to learn what each other are doing. And then when you make the phone call, it feels more snarky, but if you know them, it feels more comfortable.
Of course. Yeah. It's real. And I such good points. And I love what you brought up about equity and what Ariel brought up about crowdsourcing. Ask folks what it is that they need. I was speaking to a client who said, the algorithm that we have figured out is that anyone who has an hour plus commute with a child at home under 10 years old wants to work remote. And I was like, all right, there's a data point. And then he went on to say, and I was walking in Central Park last Friday on the way to the office, and I have to tell you, the Great Lawn was packed. And I bet everyone there was working from home on a Friday. So there's kind of this, there's this whole piece of it. Monica, again, I very much want your perspective on this as well.
Absolutely. Coming from multiple companies that are startups that are fully remote, right? And it's funny because I do agree that there is still a sense of we want to get together. So what I've seen is for high growth companies to say, going back to our last point of benefits and perks, we're going to give you an allowance, for lack of better, to be able to work at a shared working space, right? If you want, we're going to give you so much per month. But also working fully remote. I know that I was working fully remote before the pandemic. And it started, I was working for a consulting firm. And it started because they rejigged the floors. And they said, you're going to have to hotel in order to sit at a desk.
Huh.
And it was like, okay, so we would hotel in, and it started out, yep, you're going to be there 5 days a week. And then it was, oh, we can't find some place. So now
Right.
we're only going to be there for 3 days a week.
Right.
And then eventually it was like, I can do this from home full time. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh, okay. But lots of companies are doing fully remote. Like I said, the two startups that I worked for were both SaaS companies. So what was important from an HR standpoint was creating a culture that people felt a sense of belonging. So things like Annette talked about offsite, having in-person meetings, whether it be, just a departmental meeting
Mhm.
or doing, like sales, getting all the salespeople together and
Right.
having, multiple meetings, things like that. So I think it's important, right? When we look at the landscape of things, I think you're right, Jamie. I think we need to go what works best for the company, right? So it might not work good for a financial services company, but for a startup, when everyone's on a computer and using, IM and Zoom and things like that. So I think you have to really look at what works for the company.
Mhm.
And from the standpoint of, okay, we are fully remote, now what? So one of the things that I would encourage is look at your employees
Mhm.
and figure out what's going to create a culture. One of the things that I did in my previous company was we had social captains, and those social captains organized with their departments activities for them to do. So they would do cooking or painting,
Love.
or all the things that they would do as
Yeah.
a group. And then from an HR standpoint, one of the things that I did was a snack box. So everybody was able to order a snack box. And then I was like, send me your photos. And we presented them at all hands. Having continuous all hands meetings, getting people all together. I think those are all things that are important, but I think that can also be done remotely.
Yep. All good perspective. And I just love each of your generational perspectives as well. So we'll go to Q&A in shortly. So if anyone has questions, this is the right time to put them in the chat. And I know some folks also sent some questions beforehand. So with HR undergoing such rapid transformation, I'd love to hear what is the number one thing that is a challenge that you faced and how you handled it. Annette, can we kick it off with you?
Sure. I think we've touched upon this in all of our comments thus far, but it's respect and trust and including HR. And I hate even calling it HR. It's really human capital, the whole life cycle. The joke we used to make is a bad hire is a year out of your life, and it's reputationally, it could be reputationally really, really damaging.
Sure.
So I think that HR has come such a long way. It used to be HR ops, and now it's really strategic HR. And I will say that I think if you really have a phenomenal HR person who owns it, whether it's one person who wears many hats and uses the elastic resources, or you have a whole team or many teams, you must trust them, include them. They need to run side by side in a commercial way with the hiring managers and the organization. And they are gatekeepers, but not in a negative way. They're gatekeepers in a process, feedback. They keep things going. They don't stop things. And I will say one of the first things, for fast growing companies, oftentimes they wait and they don't have a process until they're at a certain amount of people or a certain asset size, or they have more than one or two or three offices. I will argue any day from the beginning, day one, whether you're 3 people, 7 people, 2,000 people, or 20,000 people, someone needs to own it, as we started this panel, and you need to trust them, and you need to bring them in, and you can't go around them. Candidates go around HR people sometimes, and I'm like, you're an idiot. Do not go around me. You go around the HR person. If you really, the HR person needs to make sure the stakeholders are in line. Make sure the feedback loop during the interview process. One of the biggest problems I'm seeing right now, because I see the candidate perspective, is the process. When people want to hire, if it's just willy-nilly and there's nobody that owns it, it just doesn't get done in an efficient. When you're a small firm, you have to be efficient.
Sure.
So I think the biggest challenge is trust, respect, making sure that they're involved early, deeply, and included with compensation, total returns. They're commercial. HR
Sure.
people are commercial and they sell the firm.
Right.
They brand the firm.
Yeah, I love what you talked about as the biggest challenge is the process, which also impacts the candidate experience.
100%.
So yeah, Ariel, if we can pass it over to you, I know you've never faced any challenges in your role, but if you could just think of one, just to humor us.
I mean, just this morning, it was the dust and smoke from Canada. No,
Exactly.
I would say the thing that I'm thinking about most right now, and let me be very clear, I have not tackled it. I haven't come anywhere near tackling it. It's merely occupying a lot of my time. And that is generative AI. And what is the role of generative AI in our space?
Mhm.
And, why is this such a challenge? Well, in part because I'm confident that I don't have the creativity to even understand the ways that this could be used for a force of good and force for, ill. And there's a little bit of the generational, I'm still coming to grips with what is possible.
Sure.
But I think it's a really exciting time. And it's a time when I'm finding almost like, back in the days when I was going to classes as a school kid, I've got to educate, I've got to try, I've got to experiment. I think that there is going to be a lot that we will be able to get from this. I
Mhm.
think that there are going to be repeatable things. I think quickly getting our hands on information that doesn't require hours and hours of time
Mhm.
is going to be just able to unlock all kinds of efficiencies. At the same time, we know that models can have biases, and if you train
Sure.
a computer, like, I'm just making this up, let's say I have a team of 10 people and they're all from Washington DC, you could then train a model to think that, okay, you have to be from Washington
Right.
DC to be successful.
Mhm.
Well, no, you don't. It's just coincidental as opposed to causal. So I think there's so much scope here, but it is one of the things that I think is going to could have enormous implications for our profession. And I'm excited, a little terrified, and really excited to see where it goes.
Love, love, love. And I think you are in good company of folks that are around the edges, just trying to really be enthusiastic learners and knowing that they also want to learn for their own role, but also, again, to study the organization, because you know that there will be issues of equity and trust and all those things that come with it. So I want to pause for another poll. It'll be on the screen now. How would you rate your company's approach to Pride Month, which is June? So I'm really curious how folks are experiencing their organizations really showing up. And I'd love to talk about what creative ways companies are doing, or what creative things companies are doing during Pride Month, and more so to make sure that it isn't a one-time a year event, but that it is very much annual infusion of a focus on DEIB from every dimension. And 43% say, I like it. We have some good Pride Month initiatives. That is fantastic, tied with not applicable. Okay. Monica, thoughts on this?
I think there are a couple things that companies can do that I've seen work. Number one is finding some organizations to donate to and making it a company-wide effort, right? What I've seen is companies actually will say, I will match up to a certain amount for any, for the total amount that the employees donate. You're making an impact two ways. You're getting your employees involved, and you're also, as a company, showing support for the community. Something else is, creating swag for your entire company. I've seen that done, and I've been part of that, right?
Yes.
Creating T-shirts and mugs and things that you can wear not just once but all year round to support the LGBTQ plus community.
And show
Yes, it's you're showing up all the time.
Yeah.
Events you can do, whether it be in the community itself, and you give your employees the go to, oh, you want to go on that walk, go on that walk, take the time to celebrate, or doing something, with the company itself. We did a drag queen bingo. It was the best event ever. It was so much fun. It was hilarious, but it was so much fun, and it got everyone engaged. So I would say that those are a few things that a company can do in Pride Month. And when you think about not just Pride Month, a couple things that companies can do to support not only the LGBTQ plus community, but the entire company. Let's create a non-discriminatory or non-discrimination, non-harassment policy and include it in the handbook. You know, not as a subsequent or not as an afterthought, but include it in the handbook from the very beginning. So not only your current employees, but new employees, when they start, they have, oh, here are the guidelines. This is
From
what we
go.
won't tolerate.
Right.
This is what we expect from you. If there is a need to create a training program, because not everybody knows, you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
So creating a training program to help all employees around the issues that that may happen. Also, having a council and a roadmap to create ERGs,
Mhm.
you know, employee resource groups are, and not just, again, not just for one community. It can be for all of the
Oh,
communities.
sure.
So, and then there are tons of holidays, right? So not just this month, but there are tons of holidays all year that we can celebrate. And just, you know, I just think it's so important that companies, if you're not currently engaged in celebrating Pride Month, or because I did see a lot of like not applicable, that's okay. That is a place to start, right? And we can meet you where you are to get you started on the journey of DEIB. I know that sometimes the company's like, you know what, I don't even know where to begin.
Sure.
Great, we're going to start right there.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, those are the things that I would do and encourage other companies to do.
It's great. Ariel, any quick thoughts from you on that one? Monica just gave us so many good ideas, but
I
yeah.
was gonna say, Monica, you stole all my thunder. That was terrific. I mean, you know, lots of the things that we are doing, Monica has already touched on. So rather than be duplicative, I'll hand it back.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go to Q&A in just a moment, but we are a bit self-care obsessed here at Inspire. So I'd love to hear from each of you. What are you doing for self-care to take care of fabulous you? So you have the oxygen to do the important work. Monica, first up.
I want to say I take a few minutes. So I live down south, and normally in the mornings, it's nice. It's like 70 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning. So my favorite thing to do is have coffee outside and watch the hummingbirds. It's something that it doesn't distract anybody. And I'm just taking a moment to think about, okay, what does today have to offer?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? What am I not going to do?
Yes.
And just taking a moment before my son gets up, and you know, all the things that are happening happen. So that's what I do for self-care.
Beautiful. It's great. Ariel.
I love, there are two things. Number one, I love that idea. And I'm a little bit further north than Monica. And when I can get away, we have a place up in Maine that is fairly remote. And so I have a slightly different scenery, but same idea, coffee, looking out at not a lot of people and mostly nature. The other thing I do, and I can't do it as frequently, but travel for me is how I reinvigorate and help myself. It is one of the only ways that I can really turn off because I'm usually so absorbed in where I am that it gets me out of the day to day. And so when I have the occasion and the good fortune to, I like to travel.
Beautiful. And Annette.
Yes, I would say, you know, ideally traveling for me too is my, you know, happy adventure. But I go see live music. I'm a real New York City. I've been living here almost 40 years, and I live New York. As much as people want to hate New York, I love New York. I walk everywhere. I go see live music 2-3 nights a week when I can. And I have a lot of musician and artist friends, and it's actually helped to keep me balanced and sane after almost 40 years in financial services. If I didn't have that, I couldn't do this. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it.
Always tired though, I will say, because it's late. I'm always tired. I'm not a good morning person.
Oh my gosh. Well, Ed Sheeran is playing at MetLife this weekend, and I hear that there are some tickets left. So, all right, quick speed round. How can we shift the burnout culture in these fast-paced worlds of startups? Anyone want to take that one?
I mean, I'll start since I was talking about
Please.
startups. I think we can shift the culture by going back to something else I said, allowing for flexibility.
Mhm.
Whether that be flexibility in hours or days or doing a no meeting Friday, where they can catch up on their work. Because I know that sometimes you've got meetings all day long. Like, when do I get the work done? So having a day, some people have no meeting weeks. I've heard of that also, where they'll
Absolutely.
pick a week and not have any meetings. So I think being able to be flexible, um, understanding what your employees need and asking the questions like, what would help you be more productive and less burnout? And then also something that nobody wants to talk about is from an HR standpoint, if you realize that your employees are working 60 and 70 hours a week, then the conversation needs to be shifted to a strategic, do we have enough headcount? Do we
Exactly
have
right.
enough people doing the work?
Right. Capacity. It's at Inspire. We actually have that as one of our company embedded in one of our company goals, and we're quarterly always looking at capacity, just with the commitment to the work-life balance. Okay, next up, love your answer. What are qualities leadership teams should be looking for a modern chief people officer? Ariel, do you want to take that one since you're in that very seat?
Sure. I mean, I would, at the risk of repeating myself, I would go back to some of the competencies that I talked about earlier. You know, I think empathy, analytics, pragmatism and commerciality, growth mindset, agility and adaptability. Those are the things on my mind right now. I
Okay.
think that what differentiates, you know, this moment in time is that information is coming at us very quickly,
Mhm.
copious amounts of information, and having to, you know, comb through all kinds of information and figure out a path is very challenging. I think that with social media, et cetera, we just are more tapped into information. There was a time when you didn't hear from other people or get, you know, you sent a letter or whatever and other people didn't know what was going on. So it's that sort of information overload. What Monica talked about earlier about flexibility, like the notion that you can sort of escape and go away. Even when I travel, you know, work still finds a way of getting in. So I think that being able to manage all of those forces, being able to be agile, being able to ruthlessly prioritize. I
Yes.
am going to tune out this noise and I am going to focus here. It's
Right.
quite a skill.
Right.
And I don't have it. I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out. But it is increasingly, these are the things. And I think growth mindset, I read a book recently by Annie Duke called Thinking in Bets. And one of the things that this started making me think differently about is uncertainty. And it's not always lack of preparation.
Sure.
Sometimes it's merely, you know, the world happens or you're unlucky or, you know, things happen. But there's a link to growth mindset. And that is, you know, not being the victim, not having things happen to me. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
whatever, you know, today I woke up and, you know, the air quality is not very healthy. Got to get on with it.
Yep. Didn't see that coming, and need to center myself so I can be prepared for colleagues who want to know from HR what the answer is. It's so interesting. We have found that, you know, Annette, there are, you know, many silver linings of the pandemic that I'm always trying to focus on because my natural factory setting is optimist. And one of them is that I think that the role of HR has been permanently elevated to mission critical. And why? Because we had to handle so many things across the last 3 years. And again, we didn't think on Sunday we'd have to have comms plans around air quality. So I think always leaving a little bit of that buffer space for the very thing that we couldn't even imagine is when we advise clients, that's kind of why they have us on speed dial, because we have the space to kind of be thinking about those things. And I think going into any role, but specifically within the high growth community, very much making space for that. And Annette, for you, how are companies addressing the blending of multiple generations into culture at firms? Any thoughts there?
Millions. Yeah, it's just respect. It's not saying, I cannot believe you don't know how to use AirBuds. Well, you know what? AirBuds are for running in the park, not for sitting at your desk when you're talking to your colleague. So I feel like there's just got to be respect. There's just got to be understanding, respect. It's the same. It's just understanding that these young people want instant gratification and they want feedback loop immediately. How can they do it better? They want to be in every client meeting. I can't tell you how many times I've said in my career, recently, earlier this week, you will be in client meetings, just not yet. you have nothing to offer. There's a cadence, there's a balance to a meeting. It's not that I don't want you there. It's just, it's not the meeting for you yet. It's like this rush to be, experience is built on, it's a snowball. You gather it.
Right.
And, yes, you should be included. That's how you learn, but you can't be included in everything, everywhere, all the time. And feedback, people are busy. There's a reason some people are not responding to you immediately. They will respond. So it's respect, it's understanding, it's going back to empathy, it's being passive, not, everyone wants, I think you have to be actionable. Like, if you want to have a great career, it's your career. Don't ask me. I can't give you a great career. I can help you if you help yourself. I do a training for interns. And I say you have to be active, not passive.
Yep.
You have to make it happen. And if they're not happy, leave. Don't threaten me. Leave. If I threatened my boss and said, I'm going to leave because I'm getting 9 offers, they would be like, here's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. Like, no, like that's the stuff that it's just different.
It is different. And I think knowing that some generations may show up that way, touch also figuring out how to communicate with them so that they feel seen. So much there. It was so good speaking with each of you. Annette, Ariel, Monica, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time. Again, for folks joining, we will see you next quarter for Inspire Live, and you can always get our recordings of these sessions at inspirehr.com or on Apple, etc., wherever you get your podcasts. We're called Inspired, and we will see you all soon. Stay healthy and thanks. Bye.